Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode from Your Own Pathway, Leadership and Mental Wellbeing. For those who don't know me, my name is Paya. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and trauma informed organizational leadership consultant. And I help leaders and teams realign to their values, rebuild trust, and create systems rooted in psychological and purpose. Because this isn't just about leadership, it's about healing how we lead. And you know what? We're all about owning it. So, today's episode is something that I wanted to do because it's very uncomfortable and it's also a feeling that I've noticed a lot as a therapist, especially doing EAP therapy. So, I want to start out by today by telling you that one of the biggest patterns that I noticed when I was working as an EAP therapist with executives, middle managers, directors, and emerging leaders was every single one of them came in talking about stress, burnout, imposter syndrome, decision fatigue, and literally carrying the weight of their teams. But as I sat there and listened to them all, there is one emotion that I kept thinking about, and I kept hearing in the themes that I heard all of them say. And I think, listening to them, as I was listening to them, I saw a lot of parallels that I noticed when I worked with individuals who came in with a lot of trauma, a lot of grief, adjustments, everything going on in life. And this one emotion, I think a lot of leaders and they never expected is one emotion that were often that the leaders and people in the working organizations were often ashamed to name was shame. And this was literally leadership shame that I noticed in most of my clients who came to talk to me. And so a lot of this was shame for not being able to fix things fast enough. There was shame for not being able to meet unrealistic demands. And there was shame for inheriting chaos and thinking that they should somehow magically solve all the years of freaking chaos. And here is what I realized through the hundreds of these conversations that I had with people coming to talk about all the things like burnout, stress, not sleeping is everything, the insecurity, the doubt, the fear of failure, the syndrome, all of it, again, had one root, and it was shame. And let's be honest, this is the one emotion organizations never talk about, but the one emotion that is silently steering everything. And today, we're naming it, we're talking about it, we're decoding it. And my purpose and my intention is to help all of us free from this emotion, name it, and also free this emotion. So, we're going to talk about shame today, especially in organizations, and how this is the one rooted emotion that does not get talked about. Again, when leaders come into my office or virtual office, they will say things like, I don't think I'm doing enough, or my team deserves better than me, or I should be able to handle this. I don't know why I'm struggling. Everyone seems to be doing fine. And I hear this one a lot. I feel guilty. I feel guilty because going home, because I didn't solve enough today. I feel guilty. And I heard this from directors, from senior managers, from C suite leaders, and new supervisors trying to leave for the first time. Again, different roles, different ages, different industries. However, the emotional pattern was identical. because they all assumed the problem was them, when actually the problem was the system they were inside of. Oof, yes. So, how did I even come up with this? What did I even see the parallels? And so, in social work, back in social work school more than 20 years ago, yes, we use a concept called person and environment, which is PI, person and environment. And this literally means you cannot understand a person without understanding the system that they are part of. So, with every leader I worked with, I zoomed out. I had to look at, okay, the structure they were operating in, the demands that were placed on them, the history of the organization, the culture norms, very important. Oof, the level of dysfunction that they inherited, oftentimes the lack of resources, and mostly the unrealistic timelines that were put on them. And once they finally saw the system, something clicked. Oh, gosh, you mean to say this isn't my failure? Or this is a failure of the environment that I'm inside of? Their personal shame was actually systematic shame that had been handed down to them. So, organizations really fail at the bottom, they fail at the top, and the impact rolls down. I mean, you think about like a mountain or a building that is like falling down. They don't, everything comes crashing down. When the top is unclear, inconsistent, overwhelmed, or unregulated, very much like a mountain, very much like a building, it cascades, it spreads, it multiplies. By the time the dysfunction reaches middle management or newer leaders, they're not just dealing with problems, they're dealing with the accumulation of problems that were never addressed for years. So, what happens? They think that they are the cause of the failure when they are actually the catcher of it. And catching dysfunction is damn exhausting. It is so freaking exhausting because no one applauds you for catching it. No one thanks you for inheriting it. No one tells you, hey, none of this started with you. Instead, what they do is they hand you expectations, they hand you pressure, they hand you accountability and responsibility, but not power. Never the power. And thus, shame grows in that gap. So let's move on and talk about this. Let's talk about inherited shame. Inherited shame. Inherited shame is what happens when you didn't create the problem, you didn't cause a dysfunction, you certainly did not build a system, you weren't even given the authority, but somehow you are expected to fix all of it. And because no one names the impossibility of that task, you internalize it. You internalize it as a personal failure. You may think, and I've heard this in a lot of my sessions with um, leaders, is I should be better. I should work harder, or I should have known what to do, or I should be able to fix this. And that is false shame. It's shame that does not belong to you, but it lives in your body as it does. So, shame, I think, when we think of shame, shame is a universal leadership emotion. And whoever chooses to watch this, I assure you, shame is cross culture. There's no boundaries, there's no wall or anything, because shame is a universal human feeling. Shame is universal, shame is across industries, shame is across cultures, shame is across roles, and shame is sure as heck across the continents. And in many culture systems around the world, including immigrant, refugee, collectivism, and high context cultures, shame is woven into the way and how people are taught to exist. So, shame becomes a moral compass. Shame is a behavior regulator. It is a way of reading expectations and a way of anticipating disappointment. It's also a way of navigating power. So when leaders feel shame at work, they really name it because it feels so familiar, it looks normal, and it feels like something they're supposed to absorb quietly. But when an organization is struggling, misaligned, or failing, leadership shame really skyrockets. Not because leaders are incompetent, but because they are often handed dysfunctional structures, unrealistic goals, historical baggage, unresolved tensions, under resourced teams, and emotionally dysregulated organizational climates. Even as I like talk about all of this, who's ever watching this, I'm sure all of you are just like, oh my gosh, yes, 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 you are exactly right, Paya, and not in an arrogant way. Like you're exactly right, Paya. It's, it's again, it's all across industries, ages. It has no bias. Shame has no bias. And then when you are in this position, you're told, hey, fix it. It's like, how do I even fix inherited baggage? How do I, how do I fix like emotionally dysregulated organizational climates? The thing is, you can't. And the painful truth is, no one is saying it out loud is leadership shame is highest when responsibility is high, but the power is low. If you are feeling shame as a leader, I want all of you to know, whoever is watching this, that you're not alone. You are not the only one, and you are certainly not failing. What you are is you are carrying the emotional tax of a system that has not been healed. Once you're able to name this, the shame loses its secrecy, and you finally gain the clarity of what is yours and never was. And even as I'm talking about this, for anyone who's ever been through trauma, grief, loss, who's inherited generational wounds, this is very much like this, except this is at an organizational level where you're just like, why do we, as a kid, sometimes you ask your parents, like, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. But it's always been done that way. And so it gets passed down and nobody questions it until it becomes like this shameful family secret or becomes this like family norm. And somebody asks us, why is this my job to figure out this stuff that was never mine to begin with? except this is like the organizational stuff. It's like, whoa, this has been going on for how many years? And yet you expect me to fix it? Okay. All right. This is inherited stuff that I can't fix in one day. This goes way from the top and from the bottom. So here is what just talking about this, here's what my organizational, my clinical background meets my consulting work. Because shame is not just an emotion, it is a physiological response. Shame makes people avoid, withdraw, go silent, overfunction, people please, micromanage, panic, manage, become very rigid, and hide mistakes. So, for any organizational level, for in organization, I can't talk. Sorry. Shame shows up as fear-based decision making. I think all of us can definitely feel this. It's like, what are they doing? This sounds like it's fear. We've all been through this. Reactive leadership, hmm. Avoidance of accountability. Yep, I think all of us are like, yep, yep, yep. Lack of communication. Burnout cycles. We as a collective human race all around the world, we are at an all-time burnout high cycle. And what this does is it decreases psychological safety, and it also increases very, very explosive crises where there's scandals and it is on the news. So, shame is not just a feeling. What it does is it becomes a culture. And once shame becomes culture, performance declines before the numbers do. That's why naming shame is not soft, it's strategic. So, this is a reframe that leaders tell me that changes everything. The truth was, whoever is watching this, whoever is in leader, CEO, or emerging leader, I'm going to tell you this loud and clear. You were never the problem. You were responding to a system that set you up like the problem. Okay? I'm going to say that again. You were responding to a system that set you up to feel like you were the problem. And once leaders understand this, we can finally begin to have nervous system regulation, shame mapping, do organizational assessment, structural intervention, leadership repair, and most importantly, is to recalibrate your team. The goal and the intention is not to eliminate the shame, actually, is to understand its origin. So it stops directing your leadership in the dark. When shame is named, it loses its power. When shame is understood, it becomes data. When shame is mapped, it becomes strategy. And this is where leaders finally exhale and say, wow, this makes sense. Okay, I am not responsible. Yes, you're not responsible. So, if this episode resonated with you, it's because you know deep down that the emotional labor you carry was never about weakness. It's been about the weight, the unshared weight, the inherited weight, and the invisible weight. Organizations do not fall because their leaders are bad. Organizations fall because their systems are unhealed. And leaders absorb the impact. If you are a leader feeling shame at this level, You do not need a performance plan. What you need is a diagnostic. Of course, it's always the performance plan that's like, you need a PIP. No, you need a diagnostic. You need someone who can read the system. And if your organization is experiencing a breakdown, turnover, overwhelm, or a crisis, this is the work that I do. Because I want to say again, the shame is not the enemy, silence is. So that is all I have for today. And I want to say, before we leave today, I want to ask you something. Whoever is watching this, most leadership, let's be honest, most leadership conversations avoid where is shame, and where is shame quietly running your leadership, and where is it quietly running your organization. If today felt like clarity, like, oh my gosh, this is what our company, our team has been going through, it's because for the first time, we named what it is and what's actually happening beneath the surface of your organization. Again, shame is universal, shame is intelligent, shame is inherited. And shame that goes unaddressed becomes a system. Most leaders aren't overwhelmed because they're incompetent. They are overwhelmed because they are carrying shame that never belonged to them in the first place. And here's the most important truth is once you're able to map the shame, you can finally interrupt it. And once you interrupt it, you can realign your entire organization. And again, this is the work I am dedicating my life to, is decoding the human architecture behind leadership dysfunction. And there is a structured methodology to this, a way to identify, a way to track, and a way to disrupt the shame patterns inside leadership teams. And you'll hear more about this, but for now, take this with you. I want to remind all of you leadership without shame is not only possible, it's the difference between surviving your role and transforming your organization. So sit with that, and as always, own it. And that is all I have for today. I know this episode was a little heavier. And if you felt this episode at all, I know that people may not want to comment. That's perfectly fine. And if you want to share it, I definitely recommend you sharing it. And if you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like any of my other episodes, leadership and mental well-being, please hit the subscribe button. But that is all I have for you all today. As always, take care of yourself, stay safe. And when I say stay safe, I don't just mean physically, I mean emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. So stay safe. I will see you all next time. Take care. Bye.